Your host this evening, the wonderful Robin Frank. Nice to see you all. Hello. 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 Nice. Hi, my name's Robin Turner. I am a sort of long-term Mannix kind of
Collaborator.
hanger-oner.
Collaborator.
Kieran Evans look-alike. It's slightly better for me. He comes from a more posher part of Wales. They breathe and bigger and stronger and we are going to talk through the film. It's funny because I was watching the film the other day. Kieran sent me a link to it, and one of the things that sort of took me back, because obviously these things are historical, and you find yourself filtering back through time, and the embassy, the hotel that you were staying in on the night that Richie left.
Yeah.
We were in the bar until about 3 a.m, just the two of us drinking, listening to those demos, and getting pissed. And you had like a 7 o'clock leave time,
I think 7, 8, something like that. Yeah. We did wring it dry in the bar. I asked Richard to come up that night. I asked him twice, and he said he might go and see a film. So I used the backup guy, Robin Turner, and you came and we just wrung it dry. And then obviously subsequently the next morning is when everything happened, obviously.
Yeah, and so it's interesting looking back at it historically, because one of the things that struck me, which I hadn't thought about for a long time, was how close it felt, how close it kind of came almost to an end. Like Sean talks about it at the start, the Astoria gigs. At the end of the gigs, you wrecked everything on the last night.
Yeah.
Rob talks about meeting and the way that Sony are talking about it. And it's funny to think about how, you think about the Holy Bible and how that album is now perceived and critically lauded as a record.
Yeah.
Yet at the time, it felt like that maybe wasn't the case.
It's hard, looking back all the time and talking about yourself. And obviously, we've just done the book with Keith Cameron, and I thought that was the end of talking, but apparently not. And you got to be careful to try and recall the right memories. I think your memories do start to get juggled up a bit, and you do start to edit yourself. You start to make yourself a bit more literate in terms of being emotional in the past than you actually were, because you've got to remember we were still quite young. I don't think we had the best ways of dealing with things. By the way, as an aside, congratulations to Kieran on the film, director. His crowning glory is, I've never, ever seen somebody convince Sean to talk that fucking much. And then he stopped. He just stopped after that, till the next. Well,
It's never spoken to me.
It speaks to me. But anyway, I think we were coming out the back. We felt like a big cult band. Even though we were on top of the pops, and we were doing tours, like Leicester, Montford Hall, medium-sized venues, as I like to joke about from that Snub TV interview. But even though we were doing quite well, we'd been on top of the pops and we had a certain notoriety, it felt like perhaps this was as far as we could go. And this felt like a bit of like a dodging car, like come on, your time is up. With the Astoria gigs and with Richie's disappearance, I could feel that kind of voice going, come on, your time's up, you eccentric taffs, now you've done your stuff and you've blazed a little trail, but that's it, that's as far as you go. There was a little bit of a nagging voice in my head that the game was up. I think I had that emotion, but I was kind of ignoring it. Sean was quite grim. Obviously, Richie was complicated. I can't quite remember what Nick's reaction to everything was after the Astoria gigs. But I just all remember just wipe out when Richie went missing. You know, we didn't really know what to feel. There was anger. We've said all this in the film, you know, there was anger, there was confusion, there was frustration because I felt like we were going to write our best songs. We'd done Motorcycle, we'd done Motown, we'd worked with amazing people, you know, we'd had so much luck on our side. Philip, Martin, Michael, Jeff and Martin from Heavenly, you know, Scott, Terry, so many people we'd worked with, but it felt like the luck had run out. I remember just in bed one night just counting it all up thinking, is the game up? So I think the only thing I thought was, I need more words. That's the only way forward. Nick needs to start writing again. And that's all I can remember, to be honest.
So, Kieran, so when you decided to look at this period of the band's career, what was your take on it as from an outside perspective? You know, how the band were. Well, I mean, how the band went from there to there in what is actually a short space of time. I remember it feeling like a long space of time at the time, but it's less than 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, so basically in like 2015, James asked me would I go on a trek with him to Patagonia with Sean and to do a fundraiser.
The shop.
Sorry?
The shop.
The shop.
The place Patagonia.
And I knew that there was going to be these anniversary tours coming up and all that kind of stuff. And Wyatt asked me whether I'd be up for designing the visual show and all that kind of stuff. And we were trekking around, amazing parts of Patagonia, and we were with a bunch of people who were very nice, but didn't really want to have a conversation with them. So I ended up spending a lot of time just walking with Sean and talking, and we just started talking about this particular period, and Sean was very, telling Phil, he was incredibly open about it, and I just kind of had it in the back of my head, I'll just store that. And then when we were talking about the shows and all that kind of stuff, I said, this might be an opportunity to make a film about this particular period, but from a slightly different perspective, kind of like, I'd watched a couple of BBC documentaries that covered this period before, but I always felt that when you put a band in front of a film crew with lights and all that kind of stuff, they're never going to tell you anything that you really want to dig around in, and I just felt that I had the confidence of the guys, and I kind of just kept on nagging a bit, really. I just basically nagged Wyatt to kind of like let me film the Holy Bible tour. I pitched him this idea of like, I'll shoot myself, and then I kind of went, and he went, well, how are you going to do everything? So I'll shoot myself. So it'll just be me, interviewing Phil, you, James, and Sean, and there will be no other cameras, so feel free to open up, and away they went, and I did it, and then I just kind of thought, we've got a film here, but we've got something that's really, really fascinating, and then I think it was Wire or James said, it's important to kind of start talking to the people who were there at the time, Terry, Martin, people like that, just to kind of like, because I don't think their voices had really been heard before, and it was really, I remember interviewing Martin, it's incredibly emotional. It was like, he welled up quite a few times because it was, it's a trauma that I think is held within the man's camp. It's something that hasn't been really explored. So, it felt, I don't want to use the word cathartic or anything like that, but it felt like it was the right time for people to talk about it, because obviously, there was the anniversary talking about. That's how it came about. That's it, really. Me being a bit belligerent, bullying Wyatt. I mean, I remember the most amazing thing I remember about the whole thing is I went down to Cardiff, and I think Faster Studios was closing down, and I did the last couple of interviews there, and I remember James doing a demo for Distant Colours in the background, and Sean was up for it, and Y was making every excuse known to man to not do the interview and all that kind of stuff. And I stupidly went out the night before and had a curry and spilt all my curry over my trousers. And he just found that hilarious, to wear this massive dark stain in the wrong part of my body. And that just kind of made him laugh, and then away we went. So, you know, if you ever want to see Nicky Y in the future, spill a curry in the front of your trousers, and you might get an interesting angle on it. And on that note, I'm going to exit the building.
Mr. Nicky Y. So, in the film, the recording in the House of the Woods that's obviously a starting point for what happened. I think I remember at the time you saying that Richie wanted it to sound like a cross between Pantera and Screamadelica.
And Nine Inch Nails as well.
Right.
Very achievable.
Yeah. But what was recorded there that became, there's the pieces that ended up on the album, and I was listening to a demo of Small Black Flowers that's on there, and the fact that it sounds, the recorded version on the record sounds so similar to that demo.
Yeah.
And I wondered whether there was a part of keeping that purity was he loved that track so much, whether the purity between demo and finished.
Is didn't mention Gillian and Kathy as well. Obviously when we pulled into the car park at the MC Hotel, directly from House in the Woods that evening that we've talked about already. I've said before, we pulled into the car park, which is underground, is very parallax view, very all president's men kind of car park, and just literally the Small Black Flowers finished, and he went, "That's the song that I really like," which tacitly felt to me that's the only song I like. And he wasn't so brutal as to say anything else, but I did read between those lines. I may be wrong, maybe right. I think he liked a bit of No Surface or Feeling because I had a tiny bit of the Pumpkins element to it, and he was a big fan of the Pumpkins. But I got that feeling that he liked something that you could see with the darkness had withered away and then he died in the song. Something purer died, kind of thing. So I wasn't sure after that moment, and it did feel like a moment because he said it very, very directly. After that moment, I remember thinking this could be a bit of this could be one of those albums where I suppose Wyatt said in many interviews after the Bible, I let Richie run with the ball on this one. He had a vision. And I remember thinking to myself, well, perhaps that's what Richie's going to say on this record, that this isn't quite my vision, but I'm still in the band, Wyatt was very magnanimous on the Bible of saying, Richie's written 70% of these lyrics, it's his vision, lyrically. So I thought perhaps I'll switch around now. The polarity of that will switch around to perhaps Nick writing more words. Then when we came to do the master version, I think we were careful not to change it too much in terms of the structure or the words, though there's a few tweaks. But that's where Mike Hedges and Ian Grimble, so Ian Grimble was the engineer and Mike was the producer. That's where real production comes out, where it just felt so full of quality, full of crystalline, clear detail. It was reserved. He got the right performance out of me, and he got Frank Sinatra's harp player. Can't believe I forgot her name. Sorry. She did an amazing job. It was just 2 passes, and she just did it. And she was lovely. She said, "Oh, I love this song. This song is very 60s." I remember saying something about The Spider and the Fly, which is a Stone song, which I had in my head too. We were careful to be faithful to it because of what Richie had said beforehand, definitely. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a bit about Design for Life, because obviously it's the pivotal point of the record, and it's such a, I don't know, it's a pivotal point of your life, isn't it? and he described it in the. I've read it described as Trojan Horse Mannix, a radio-friendly, milkman hummable song that delivers a very clear political message. I just wonder, how does it feel writing something like that after all the things that happened? Was that cathartic? Was that redemption?
Well, kind of number one, why I was writing in a very different way. He was writing within some kind of meter, which was more easily sung. That was obvious straight away. There's still lines in there which literally hit you in the face, you know. Right here in my dirty face, right here in my pretty face. There's still lines that just, and that's really struck me. I was playing with the boys the other day in the studio. We're going through lots of old songs like Next I Had to Leave Moscow, I Was in the Hospital, just lots of old stuff that we haven't played for ages. And the first lines in Was in the Hospital is, I was in the hospital, tried to put my fingernails out. Woo, hit! And you see, you've got this song where, you know, we hang our hopes on it, but it's still got lines in there like, if I about right here in my dirty face, it's still very, very oppositional. It still kind of startles you a bit as a lyric. But the song, when I got those lyrics, and I thought it was so succinct that we didn't really need another verse either. We just changed one word in the next verse from dirty to pretty, obviously. And I remember thinking it was about bust and boom economy, economic policies. It was about a kind of the long traditional tirade to kind of like keep the working classes in their place in terms of their ambitions and their spending power, and keep them reigned with fear in terms of just the erosion of union rights, etc., etc. It was all in there, and there was a real beautiful, gentle pride in there. It was a proud lyric, but not like proud with his chest stuck out. It was something that glided, and I remember thinking, this is it. He's managed to distill it all down. After coming off the back of an album like Yes, really. Sometimes you're having history lessons, which I loved, but we had to take a turn somewhere else. It had to be more distilled. We had to try and repurpose everything we knew about ourselves, and this lyric did it. And it did it in a really overarching kind of way, I think.
Kieran, what was your? Can you remember hearing that record for the first time as a Welsh acid house head? The effect that it had.
Not the bill that this boy was.
Not on this occasion. No, I can remember exactly where I heard it. I was in newsagents buying a magazine, and I think it was on Radio 1, and this is the new single from the Manic Street Preachers, and I can definitely say I've never really, I'm not saying this just with James, I've never experienced it since, but it was like being hit by a thunderbolt. I mean, literally from the first bar and the lyric, I literally stood, like the guy was, I was trying to pay for I was standing at the counter, and I was about to pay, and then basically I handed over the magazine, and then I was just stood, and I couldn't move, I was paralysed. The guy kept on shouting at me, do you want to pay or not? Do you want to pay or not? And I said, I'm listening to this. All right, what is this? All this kind of stuff. And it still hits me like a thunderbolt. Still hits me like a thunderbolt. We've just done a whole pile of shows, and it's still extraordinary the effect it has on people when you hear it live. So it's still extraordinary how people. We did a show in one of our shows we did was in Norway, which felt like it was in like a beer garden, but it wasn't. But when design came up, like about 50 people just turned towards us at the front of the house and just started pumping their hearts like that, because we were using these visuals of like miners and all that kind of stuff. They were just pumping their hearts and like doing that. And it's when you see that you kind of realise how powerful this song is, how powerful, how much it means to people, And it's very rare that you get that sense of how much it means to people, And it's a privilege every night sometimes to just be able to experience it. But I still kind of think about it like every couple of weeks about I still pinch myself, actually, that I'm working with a magazine picture. Because I think about the time of the magazine shelf, trying to find a magazine, and being unable, paralysed. And, yeah, that is the power.
It's nice to hear that you were so definite about your reaction to it, because
So I wasn't filled up, right?
No, it's
cool. I don't have terminals, I don't have social.
it all helps. It all helps. But before we released it, I remember Rob Stringer, just he was like, poof, that's it. There were a couple of people that were close to us that weren't so sure about it, which really shocked me. There was a journalist that I really respected that said he thought it just sounded like a ballad, which really shocked me as well. And then we spoke the Stone Roses at Wembley Arena. I remember Nick White was wearing a Cardiff Red Devils ice hockey top. And people were a bit shocked by that. They were like, what the fuck? He's a big, Red Devils fan kind of thing. Anyway, and the reaction that night when we spoke the Roses wasn't great. It wasn't, So I remember there were a few people said, Stringer said, this is amazing. But there were a few people around us that weren't quite so sure. So it's nice to hear that. It is kind of thing.
It's a pure record, isn't it? It's kind of, I don't know. It's hard to think of people not getting it now, but yeah.
I remember the nice moment was supporting Oasis at Main Road, and then suddenly you saw that people knew more than two of our songs. That kind of crowd. They knew more than Despair, or they knew more than Motorcycle. Suddenly, a third of this crowd all knew this song. It was a good moment.
So Nick says on the film that a record like Everything Must Go would struggle 20 years on. That's 30 years next year, just to show our age. Thanks to the conservatism of the age. So, I mean, we were talking about this a minute ago. It's hard to think about. 10 years on from that, probably an even more conservative age.
I don't know. Wire's got a way more incisive brain than mine to try and unlock what things mean in different periods and looking at the future. I'm not quite so sure. I think the sound of the record would sound quite jarring on the radio, because it's quite grandiose and it's quite emotionally incontinent. And it's kind of not emotionally incontinent, that's not, but it is grand in its vision, and it does try to repel the assumption that people in working classes should be humble, or kind of like, so I don't hear that much on the radio, so I think the sound of it may jar on the radio today, but I just remember just Wire's lyrics thinking, this is like a bit like Idris Davis, it's not ashamed of its own identity, it's heartfelt, but it's not too earnest. There are massive boulders of refusal in there, but it's all couched in poetry. And I remember just thinking, it's a bit like something from Guardia Deserta, Idris Davis. It's not ashamed of itself at all, and that's why I still love that lyric, definitely. I don't know if it would have an effect now. I'm not quite sure. I haven't got the brain to figure that one out.
I'd like to interject at this point. Whilst I've been doing a little bit of archive research on a sequel project we've been working on. There's a moment in Top of the Pops, because you were on Top of the Pops, 4 singles on Top of the Pops, and Ian Brody introduces this Australia, and he goes, it's the 4th track from the album Everything Must Go, and everyone's a fucking, we just say everyone's a winner, and it's like, wow, kind of like, and then when you look back, it's like previous presenter was Jack D introducing, and then there's another guy, I think it was in space or something like that, with a bit off his head, and the other guy was Chris, what's his name? Eubank, that's it.
Oh, the Eubanks.
Eubank.
I met Chris Eubanks in a bar, and I asked him to be on, we asked him to be on the cover of one of the singles. He went, "Who are you?" He's good away.
And then you kind of like look at, the thing about it is, it's like, you're on the Smash Hits Awards without a debt. It's like, when you're on TFI Friday, and it is that kind of like why I said, it wasn't like we've taken over the mainstream. It feels like that tracks of London. It's quite an extraordinary.
4 single campaigns, remixes, B-sides.
I mean, Stealth Sonic Orchestra, instrumental version, not available at the moment, but I've got it on a CD. Mark Farrow's design as well. Everything. It's an extraordinary piece of art. I think the music and the sleeves and everything. There's a kind of like a coalescing or something like that. Just something happens, and it's a beautiful thing. And it was so exciting to kind of like look back at that when I was making the film about Christ. And I remember like going to see you at Kentish Town Forum, and Liam Gallagher just runs on stage and grabs wire and all that stuff. He just, I was fucking hammered. You could tell. But you felt, I think you felt that, like Liam Gallagher's on stage with the band. You could feel that something was happening.
He liked No Surface or Feeling, that's what he liked.
Did he?
Yeah, he used to go, I fucking love when it goes. I was just like, crack on, I like that.
You ever want to make a solo record, Liam? Where you guys?
The film kind of, the end point of it is, near the end, is the Brits.
Yeah.
So, that's the long period of the film, as opposed to the, going from the Astoria to recording Everything's Go. It's the extra year on the end.
Yeah.
And that year was spectacular. It was an escalation of size of gigs, which gets to 9x in the end. And I sort of wondered, how that must have felt to be propelled through that after all the stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
And then to have that, which was any band, I don't know.
There is a timeline in my head where it starts, and of course you've got to be really careful because we come out the other end. Kinda, you've got to be careful not to high-five yourself because we did everything despite of Richie's absence, and it does bring you down. It does bring you crashing down. It brings your emotions crashing down, and you think, wow, I'm high-fiving myself here, 2 Brits and this and that, but look at what the cost was. And not saying that we were responsible for anything, but it felt like it was a cost. It just did. You can't deny that. But there is a timeline that I'm careful to look on with a bit of like some kind of sensitivity, and that is, I remember sitting in Askew Road. I was still living at Philip's house, and Terry Gould and Liz Gould were kindly putting up with me at the house in Askew Road, and I was sat watching, some might say, On Top of the Pops, which I love that song. I fucking adore that song. I think it's amazing. And I just remember it was the second appearance, I think, on Top of the Pops, and Noel just raises his guitar above his head at the end, and I don't know even if we'd started writing Design for Life at that point. I was just so down. I was so confused and lost about everything, friendship, abilities, where I wanted to live, whether we go back to Wales, whether the group could survive, whether, kind of like Richie's parents would even know how to talk to us, with Richie saw me saying, everything was sort of for grabs emotionally. And I remember watching Noel just raise his guitar above his head and Top Pops to this song which I loved. And I just remember just getting up and just going for a walk for 4 hours just around Shepherd's Bush. I just feel utterly defeated. But I love this song. I was haunted by this song which I admired so much. And I remember coming back and I remember just thinking, it's just a song that can save us. The only thing that can save us is each other, and all the people around us. And that sounds dramatic, but it did feel like that. And then you get to the timeline of the Brits, and it does feel a bit B-movie-ish sometimes. It does feel like, we did. But, there is a price to pay, and you catch yourself in the mirror, just smiling and thinking, oh, well, that's amazing. Then you realise it would have been better before us. It's no doubt, because we would have gone places with Richie, which would have been surprising. And Nick, while pushed himself to different places lyrically, but we were always to be missing that angle and that friendship. So you catch yourself in moments of glory and you go, keep a lid on it, I suppose. But the timeline was from watching that Top of the Pops to the Brits. It did feel like, wow, we managed to survive, that kind of thing.
think we might have hit our time limit. So I just
Pretty
want
good
to
way
say
to end, actually. But
thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
thanks very much for coming.
We'll see you in the next one. Kieran's films is on, and Maura's going to get Sean next time. Thank you very much.